Okay, wanted to do one last video because the first two are a little off the cuff. I didn't really script them. So as I was in between filming that one and this one, a lot of points I wanted to hit on still. So here I've got three different cones. On the right, immature, very young. They almost have this little ursulate kind of shape to them. And then in the middle there, got a ripe cone, and then an overripe cone. And this was just a little too old. You could still probably use it, but commercially it wouldn't be sold like that. And then down here, I cut up another flower cone and laid it out. And then I wanted to put a little bit more detail. Those are bracts. So those are bracts right there. And then inside, you can see, focus a little better, where all the yellow, those are the lupulin glands, the resin glands I talked about earlier. And in those sections there where it's found, is called the bracteole. And then that long stalk structure down the middle is called the strig. And then all those little petal like pieces, those are bracts along the outside. So technically this is an apetalous flower, I guess you'd say. And this is also a dioecious flower. Or a dioecious plant. So these are female cones. There's nothing male about any of this stuff here. Male and female plants are completely separate. They're also photoperiod dependent, though you don't really see that super often because they're more of an outdoor crop. Very recently, there's been some more efforts to try to grow them indoors, but it's kind of rare still. I've got a ruler here for scale, so you can see the size of some of these cones. So they're about, an inch to 2 inches. These aren't the largest cones I've ever seen, but they're good size. And then, so I got a small little branch here. I wanted to zoom in, and hopefully you can kind of see. It's hard, but along the margin of the stem there, those tiny, look almost like thorns. And that's what separates this. This is not a vine. I love this distinction. It is a bine with a B. Vines and bines are two completely different things, and vines wrap around and grow up and constrict, while bines use those little thorn-like pricker structures. You can kind of see when I pulled up my hand there in the glove, against the glove. Yeah, there's some. And they actually grasp on as they climb upwards. So coconut core twine is really common in the industry as a trellis material, though any kind of strong rope will work. It just has to be able to hold some weight because they can get pretty heavy later in the season as these cones get heavy. Okay, what else? Native to Asia, Humulus Lupulus is, though there's recently been some more efforts to look at Humulus neomexicanus, which is a North American variety native to Mexico. Not nearly as popular or as common commercially. Haven't been as much breeding going on with them yet, or as much use in brewing. These plants last a long time though, and I've seen crowns for sale that were over 25 years old. They get kind of expensive, but you can take those and break them up or plant it as is. Though they do hit a decline in production as they get a little older. For propagation, the seeds are highly variable, kind of like apples are. So it makes a lot more sense to clone these plants by simply taking a cutting off of the rootstock. And they'll send runners up in the spring, and that's usually the easiest way. You don't need a very big cutting to repropagate these plants. Just 3 to 5 inches is sufficient. And you'll want to take that and then replant it about 6 inches underneath the surface of the ground, with the shoots pointing upwards. And in about 3 years, they'll hit production level, and they'll really start pumping them out. First couple of years, they don't produce quite as much, but these plants just get larger and larger over time. And a lot of homeowners who plant them for the novelty or for the brewing aspect don't always consider quite how large they're going to get for when they plant them or for their placement. And kind of what makes them so interesting as a commercial crop is because of their highly variable seeds. It takes usually almost up to a decade or longer for a new variety to hit the market because it has to go through such strenuous testing. And it's a long process. If you're growing from seed, you have to cold stratify them for a couple months. Recommended. I've seen guys use perlite in a plastic bag and then stick it in the fridge. I've never done it myself. It's kind of next level hop growing, I guess. Right now, there's a huge trend lately for tropical fruit flavors, which is kind of new for this plant. If you were to describe what this smells like, older varieties native to Europe. There's a lot of production done in Germany and in the UK and the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, Poland. Some of the older varieties tend to be more floral in nature. The German, or not the German, some of the continental varieties are usually referred to as noble because they have these light aromatic qualities, whereas some of the American ones tend to get a little bit more aggressive. You compare American beer to craft beer to European beer, you can see the difference right away. Some of the American cultivars like Cascade, Chinook, Nugget have grapefruit, pine, lemon, orange flavors. Sometimes you'll get some allium notes like garlic or onion if it's an older crop, or depending on where it's grown. They're a full sun plant. If they don't receive full sun, the inflorescence will suffer a little bit and production will suffer. Slightly high, well, they're not heavy feeders, but they do like their nitrogen. And they're very, very fast growing plants. That's part of the reason why they have been recorded growing over a foot in a single day during the peak of growing season. So these are very fast growing plants. Usually they'll start resprouting depending on where you are in the world. Around March, you'll find them coming up out of the ground. And then you'll want to cut them down to just a few different vines that you want to grow, because they will grow prolifically, and you have to train them to just 3 to 4 per hill. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of smaller cones on lots of smaller vines that go everywhere. The plant we looked at earlier could have trimmed a little bit more during the growing season. More adventitious shoots came out. But I just kind of let them sprawl on the ground. It's a hobby plant for me. Obviously, I'm not selling these. This is just for my personal use, so they come out pretty well. So for drying and preserving, I have a food dehydrator here with some different racks like this. So I'm going to fill this up like this, run it overnight. What's really nice about this dehydrator is I can go super low in temperature because you don't need to go super hot, but a little heat-assisted drying will definitely help. If you go over, say, 140 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to start destroying a lot of the aromatic qualities and usefulness from this plant. And aside from beer brewing, which I talked about a lot, other medicinal uses, you can use it as a tea for sleep. I know a lot of people actually who will flat out just eat some of these hops as a sleep aid. Yeah, so like I said, make it as a tea. I've heard it been used for washes. It's antifungal, antimicrobial. It's a great preservative, and really kind of came into use 1500s when the church started to tax different beer production methods. Beer and taxes is a really, really interesting story in and of itself. Anyway, these are what you'd refer to as whole cone. They're the entire flower that I'm going to dry. But commercially, what they'll generally do is process them into a pellet, which lasts longer, takes up more space, absorbs less liquid, easier to use. Other forms you'll see are concentrated oils or sometimes concentrated resin glands themselves, which are a little bit easier to use, though you miss out on some of the aromatic qualities. So I have to dry these right now because if I don't, they will mold pretty quickly and they will go bad. So I'm going to fill this up with the cones I have picked and dry them overnight. It should take about 8 to 12 hours until they're down to around 10% moisture, just light and papery. And then I'm going to vacuum seal them and stick them in my freezer. So I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Sorry it's a little bit long, but I'm I'm really into hops, and I thought this would be a cool way to tie into my presentation. So thanks for watching.